Hi, everyone. Welcome to our last webinar of the year, I guess. Well, the school year. And so we're excited to see everyone again. Hopefully you'll learn something new again today. Working on getting everything ready to demo later on, but I'm going to hand it over to Katrina, but I'm going to start by telling you about this beautiful flower in our garden. It's not spring anymore. It's the end of spring, almost summer. And so our garden is obviously bolting. And if you know anything about bolting, it means that all of our plants have grown flowers and they're starting to seed. And so this is a beautiful flower. These have all pretty much gone, but this is borage and it's the courage plant. And it's a very cool plant because the story behind it is if you eat it, it opens up your heart and gives you courage. And so I often tell people if they walk through the garden, don't take more than one. But if you see these pretty little flowers, it gives you a little courage for the day. So I will now hand it over to Katrina.
Thank you. Sounds good. So our final topic this year is about microbiome and women's health. And so I had fun going and finding some new research, some of it actually from here at UC Irvine, to highlight women's health and the microbiome. And I'm Katrina Whiteson. I'm a professor in the molecular biology and biochemistry department, and I'm sitting here in the teaching kitchen with Chef Jess. We've been doing this for 2 years and it's been really fun. I always enjoy the opportunity to visit here. These pictures are from a month or two ago. We've been doing a freshman seminar, so I've been over here a lot. And these are chamomile flowers. Some of the students brought it home to make tea, and there's a bunch of poppies growing in there too. I want to just make sure you guys can hear. Okay, I'm getting a mute message. And
for some reason, your screen isn't showing up. I don't know why.
Okay.
Try maybe stop sharing and then share again.
Is it working okay? I'm going to stop sharing.
Nope.
Okay, let me try again. Excuse me. Okay,
hopefully.
Okay, thank you. Good to know. All right, well, it's like the Great British Bake Show when they show you all the flowers in the fields before they enter the kitchen. If you've ever seen the intro to there, I'm sharing some of the nice spring garden flowers. And here's an avocado that one of the students chopped in our freshman seminar. There were several students who had never chopped an onion who joined our class. And so I know you don't have to come to a UC to chop an onion, to learn how to chop an onion, but I really enjoy getting to see people expand their horizons that way. Also this year, I made a really surprising discovery in my garden, and I didn't actually realize it at first what this plant is, but I will reveal that it is actually a chia plant. And as you guys know, I've been using chia seeds in my interventions in my undergraduate classes and in a breast cancer survivor study. And I did sprinkle some chia seeds last year, but I have never seen a plant myself actually getting this big. It's like almost as tall as me now. And it makes these beautiful purple flowers that will turn into seed pods soon. So we'll probably harvest about 12 chia seeds, but it's been a fun discovery. And just as a reminder, I'm zooming to you from UC Irvine. We're right between San Diego and Los Angeles. And there's a few events I'm highlighting. We're going to have a microbiome symposium at Caltech for all of Southern California in September. And we're going to have a microbial dark matter meeting at the ranch in Laguna in August. So those are some meetings I'm organizing coming up. And here's my email address. And this is our series where we have monthly webinars. The website carries all the recipes if you'd like to see them there. And I have a really fun moment to share from you from our freshman seminar where Chef Jess saved the day. And this is an electric stovetop, so it's actually pretty amazing that it was able to have flames emerging like this. But there were just onions and oil in this pot for making lentil soup, and it led to this dramatic scene with flames, and Chef Jess kept her cool and put the fire out immediately. So it was a fun moment that I think the students will always remember. Here was our year of of webinars. Here's the recipes. They're all available on the website, and the recordings are available too. And here's the list of things down at the bottom of things that Jess is going to show us how to make today. So we've got black bean egg bites with a yogurt sauce, and the complete recipes were emailed out, and they are on the website as well, as my understanding. Here's the yogurt sauce that's going to be going together with those egg bites. And then I'm really excited that we're going to learn how to make miso and also natto today. I eat miso a lot. I often substitute miso for salt. So here's an example. I made a challenge each quarter where I cook for my 60-person class, and I have a less than $20 limit for the meal. With the goal of showing that eating well doesn't have to be expensive. I think it can be time consuming. Of course, it takes time to cook. But one idea is to use miso instead of salt as a way to boost your fermented food intake, kind of in a natural way that you don't have to make too much effort to make it happen. And similarly, I just soaked these lentils with hot water overnight and cooked it up into a soup while I was making breakfast the next morning. I'm a busy working mom. This was not something I had a lot of extra time to do. And I brought it into the students, and luckily they appreciated it. And I would definitely do it again. So anyway, there's a very simple recipe for you. And now to the topic at hand, which is microbiomes and women's health. So the microbiome refers to the community or collection of bacteria, viruses, fungi, and other microbes that exist in a specific environment. So, you have different microbes living in the moister part of your skin in the elbow than you do on a more dry part of your skin on your forearm. And your feet, for example, are rich with fungi, whereas the rest of your skin tends to be colonized more by bacteria, just as an example. In the last 15 years, as DNA sequencing has become more accessible, we now have tons of data from small studies showing correlations with the microbiome composition and so many different health conditions. And it's all, a little bit preclinical. We don't have a lot of clinical recommendations to make based on all these discoveries. So we have a big challenge in the next 10 or 15 years to use this information to help improve people's health. But we know that the microbiome is correlated with obesity, many different cancer types, and I personally have been involved in studies about that, autoimmune disease, both its development and progression, brain chemistry. So there's a really interesting gut-brain axis field of research that's flourishing. Even vaccine efficacy is very much associated with microbiome composition. We're going to say it again and again that one of the main things you can do to boost your microbiome health is to eat fiber. So if you want to engineer a resilient microbiome, what are your options? Well, we've got probiotics and prebiotics. Probiotics being live cultures, preferably in the form of fermented foods like the miso that you're going to learn how to make with Chef Jess today. But probiotics can also be found in the form of capsules in the big probiotic industry. And then prebiotics refer to fiber, so carbohydrates, like big, long chains of complex carbohydrates. Those are the fuel that your microbes prefer. And if you eat fiber, it will persist in your digestion down to your colon, where most of the anaerobic gut bacteria live. And if you eat fiber, you are really giving your microbes their favorite fuels and promoting the growth of the kinds of microbes that you really want in your gut, which are actually not usually available in probiotic form. Other things that are in active area of research include using fecal transplants, especially after antibiotics, to restore the gut microbiome, and phage therapy, which are viruses that could act as alternatives to antibiotics, especially for antibiotic-resistant infections. I was part of this review about the microbiome led by Jack Gilbert at UC San Diego about the clinical translation of microbiome research that just came out in Nature Medicine. And I want to just highlight that, we've actually got 2 FDA-approved treatments that are microbiome focused that emerged since this field began to explode about 10 or 15 years ago. And in a way, that's actually pretty fast. It takes time for these ideas to be developed and approved. So I'm kind of proud of our field for the kind of progress that we've made in these years. And And so here's some vision about how the future of microbiome science could look. Maybe we will start to have clinical approved microbiome tests, and we can use that as part of our health assessments. And actually, you can see the microbiome modifiers here resemble the tools I just highlighted for how you could engineer a resilient microbiome. So fermented foods, that's something you're learning about today with the miso and natto that Jess is going to teach us about. And then phage therapy. So if you use very specific phages, viruses that kill only one type of bacteria, you could target your pathogens and not end up killing the rest of your microbial community when you need to treat an infection. And then the last one here is fecal transplants, where you could restore microbes that are missing, especially after antibiotics. But the main advice that I think you can get, even if you get your microbiome tested, is to fill your fiber gap. So the fiber is the thing that we know will fuel your microbiome, whether it's women's health or children's health or anybody's health, your dog's health, for example. Eating fiber is the best tool we have that we know of for promoting a healthy microbiome, especially together with fermented foods, actually. And maybe you've heard me, this is my favorite topic, so maybe you've heard me showing these 5 top fiber-rich foods before, but avocados, believe it or not, are high in fiber. That creaminess is actually soluble fiber, so there's not just healthy fats in avocados. Beans and lentils are very high in fiber. Half of the carbohydrates in beans and lentils are in the form of fiber, so it helps you avoid a blood sugar spike, and it helps to fuel your gut microbiome. And then berries, believe it or not, they're so sweet, but actually they're also very high in fiber. Frozen berries are an accessible source for everyone too. And then chia seeds, you guys got to see the chia in my garden. They are the winner when it comes to the ratio of fiber to carbohydrate. So 10 out of the 12 grams of carbs in 2 tablespoons of chia seeds are in the form of fiber. So chia pudding, for example, as long as you don't add too much sugar, actually is a really easy on your blood sugar kind of a food. Okay, one last highlight from the kitchen when it comes to how you could fill your fiber gap and boost your fiber diversity, your plant fiber diversity. In the teaching kitchen recently, Jess was so nice to be up for trying this crazy experiment, but we learned about this 60 plant smoothie on the Netflix documentary, Hack Your Health. And you're welcome to check out the documentary too. And they highlight Larry Smarr from UC San Diego, who has been drinking a 60 plant smoothie every day for a few years, and it's really boosted his microbiome in a healthy direction. However, I don't know if this smoothie is for everyone. It contains raw potatoes and raw Brussels sprouts, and you can click on, or you can find the recipe at the Microsetta Initiative. And so we laid out all these ingredients for the students in the freshman seminar to try to make their own smoothie. But we actually had a caveat, which was to please not add things that you didn't think you would like because we didn't want to waste food. That was Chef Jess's influence, very helpful influence. And so the students made their smoothies and nobody wanted raw potatoes, even though Chef Jess offered them. And you can see the look of satisfaction here. I tasted a bunch of the smoothies. They were very good, but most of them chose reasonable ingredients like berries. So there was a reason they were good. But anyway, just as an idea, smoothies are another way to get some fiber into your life in a palatable and pretty convenient way. I also just want to highlight that a lot of what we know about the gut microbiome tells us that people are very different. Each person and household is quite unique, and it's not easy to figure out why one person's microbiome is different from another person's microbiome. So there's just a lot to learn. There's huge frontiers that we are still working on in the microbiome field. And so, for example, one reason I brought this plot up in today's women's health lecture is that this is one of the biggest studies we have of the microbiome that includes thousands of people. It's a European cohort. And I just want you to notice in plot B over here that, first of all, 92% of the variance in this study is unexplained, as in we can see that people are different from each other, but we can't identify factors from our own data that explain where the differences come from. So most of the differences are still a mystery. Like, why does one person have this type of microbiome? We often can't say. Some of the biggest factors that do explain the variance, they start at the beginning of this plot over here on the left, like the Bristol stool score, which is telling you about the consistency of your poop. And you don't need expensive sequencing to see your Bristol stool score. You can just look at it. And that's one that explains a lot of variance. Age explains a lot of variance in the gut microbiome. And, then there's quite a few others here: body mass index, fruit consumption, bread preferences. But look how far you have to go before you see gender. So the difference between male and female people in this big cohort study of the microbiome, only a very small difference could be deciphered out of this data type between men and women in the study. So I think that's fascinating. Clearly, men and women are very different, but the signal is not a big one, at least the way that we measure the microbiome these days. So I'm sure in 10 years, we're going to know a lot more. Maybe this will seem very naive. So in 10 years, let's check it out again. But from now, we actually don't know that much about why men and women have different microbiomes. Okay. I also want to share that here's this international consensus statement on microbiome testing and clinical practice. And it's got a lot of leaders from our field. And this is a really important statement considering that there's a lot of companies that will offer to sequence your microbiome. And currently, we do not have a microbiome test that is considered to be a diagnostic tool in medicine. So if you were, another example is that there have been several studies where people take the same samples and send them out to several companies, and the results come back very different, even from exactly the same sample. So we're still really working on standards in our field, but it still can be fun to get your microbiome sequenced. It's interesting to see what you can learn. So I want to share that the company Tiny Health is offering a discount to the people who attend this webinar to have their microbiome sequenced. And so as you can see, this is a widely used company. And so this could be fun, and I want to share the possibility for all of you, but just with a hint of caution that it's still early days and being able to interpret the results from these studies. I think, if you were to get your microbiome sequenced, a piece of advice you might get is to eat more fiber. And that would be a good idea anyway. And you might know that anyway, but it also might be fun to get to see what your microbiome looks like. The standards are just a huge effort. I'm actually part of this effort. We have a steering committee at the National Institute of Standards and Technology where we're working towards better standards for the microbiome. And so I'm optimistic that we're going to figure this out. And I hope that there is a world where we can use our microbiome testing to understand our health better and to replace missing microbes that might be able to boost our health in important ways. So there is a future where probiotics that actually represent missing human microbes that we could supplement back could exist. And, I'm excited to see that all happen, but we're still early days when it comes to that kind of stuff. Okay, so I have a few stories to share about microbiome and women's health across the lifespan. And so let me just launch into them. I know I've actually shared a little bit about the bifidobacteria that can break down the sugars or the fibers in breast milk before. But that is an example of a missing microbe. So there's parts of the world where babies are still having their gut microbiome dominated by this turquoise blue bifidobacteria that can break down the breast milk sugars. But look at how much less of that specific bifido is present in the other cohorts in this study. So there's very little of that blue in the United States and in Europe. So that is an example of a missing microbe, and having access to that microbe not only means that infants would get energy from the 15% of the breast milk that comes in the form of breast milk sugars or fibers, but also it means that then your immune system is developing with a bunch of this bifido in your gut, and that could have really big long-term health impact. So the group that has really led a lot of the research related to this is up at UC Davis, and they've started a company called Evolve, and they sell this probiotic Evivo. So if you have someone in your life who is having a baby. I think it's good to know about this. And I'm not a doctor and I'm not advising one way or another, but I just think it's a good thing to know about, that it's an option that you could try to replace this bifido. And when infants are given this bifido while they're being breastfed, in part B of this plot over here, you can see the infants who are being given this bifido come to have a gut microbiome that is dominated by the bifidobacteria. So it's a really simple system in a baby gut where the main food is breast milk. And you can see it's just really effective. So that's an example of a probiotic where we understand it. Probiotics are usually transient. They tend to be, for an adult, a very small minority of the gut microbiome that's being replaced. And so it's a 70 or $80 billion industry these days with little evidence or oversight. So this is an area that I have a huge optimism that we're going to figure it out and have much better options in the future as we come to understand our microbiome better. But that bifido for the babies, that's an example of one where there's some molecular evidence of why it would work. That bifido has also been used in preterm infants for very low birth weight preterm infants. And it's actually been shown to help with necrotizing enterocolitis, which is a really terrible outcome of a gut inflammation that is very destructive, that is pretty common in preterm infants. And so this bifido has been shown to be helpful, but there's always a lot of pros and cons. And, this is a public health, ethical, and philosophy question, really, about how to handle it, because in a baby whose gut is not very strong, the bifido could also escape the gut into the blood and cause sepsis. And that's exactly what happened. And so actually, in this case, the bifido has been banned from use in preterm infants in that context in order to protect from sepsis. So it's interesting for me to imagine a future where we know what treatments to use that could end up protecting babies from necrotizing enterocolitis without exposing them to risk for sepsis. Another interesting set of studies that are going on is to look at how this bifido affects the development of autoimmune diseases like eczema and type 1 diabetes. Here's a study in Europe with cohorts in 5 countries. And it's going to be pretty soon we learn. This paper came out in 2021, and they're going to wait to see how many of the children in the study have developed type 1 diabetes by the age of 6. So I'd say in 5 years or so, we're going to know if supplementing with this bifido in breastfed children who are at high risk for developing type 1 diabetes, we're going to know if this helps avoid the development of type 1 diabetes. So I'm personally very interested in these results coming out. Okay, so back to other parts of the women's health across the lifespan. I have a few stories that relate to vaginal microbiomes and how hormones affect the gut microbiome and cancer that I think are going to be interesting to share. Maybe you've heard of fecal transplants, for example. So fecal transplants have been very effective in treating recurrent C. diff infection after antibiotic use. Well, what about vaginal microbiome transplants? And so this is a pretty small study from Israel, but it made a really big splash. And I'm very curious to see the future of this research as well. And in this study, they looked to see if they could help protect people who were having really recalcitrant and difficult bacterial vaginosis by giving them a vaginal microbiome transplant from someone with a healthy microbiome, a healthy vaginal microbiome. And it actually showed a lot of promise as a potential treatment for intractable bacterial vaginosis. Typical healthy vaginal microbiomes tend to be dominated by one lactobacillus. There's a few different types of vaginal microbiomes, and many women shift between them as part of a normal healthy lifespan. And so anyway, if you could help people get the healthy vaginal microbiome, that those lactobacillus tend to make a lot of acid and keep the vaginal microbiome environment in a low pH state, which probably helps to outcompete some pathogens. So anyway, this to me is really an interesting direction, and maybe we will have essentially probiotics that can help to replace the vaginal microbiome strains that are sometimes lost and therefore protect from infection. Okay, switching gears to another really favorite topic area that I think would be really interesting to share with all of you is that there have been big advances in measuring estrogen in stool samples so that we can understand hormone levels, comparing them from the blood and the stool. And we now understand that your gut microbiome actually has a really important role in regulating estrogen levels. It has to do with the recycling of the estrogen. So some estrogen essentially gets tagged for removal from the body, but there are gut bacteria that can remove that tag and essentially reactivate the estrogen so that it remains part of your system. So already that's interesting because it suggests that you could boost people's estrogen levels by making sure that they have the microbes that are able to remove that tag for destruction. And believe it or not, there's actually already a small trial where people have found probiotics that contain the enzymes that can help to reactivate estrogen, and they've tried a study with peri and postmenopausal women. So in this study, they screened several strains of bacteria to find ones that were active in the production of the enzymes that could maintain higher estrogen levels in the gut and therefore in the body. And they found that supplementing with a probiotic that contained that enzyme was able to modulate the estrogen levels in peri and postmenopausal women. So these are preclinical small studies, but really interesting that it could be that we have a lot more options for how to maintain our hormonal health in midlife in the future. And then in a very similar direction, I want to share this study about the gut microbiome impact on breast cancer treatment. And actually, this is a UC Irvine study. So I want to highlight Elizabeth Bess in our chemistry department who led this study. And really the key findings are, well, the premise is that one of the most widely prescribed drugs to prevent breast cancer is tamoxifen, but only about half of patients are responding effectively. And it's not something that can be explained by liver enzymes or other patient genotypes. But it turns out that we have gut microbe enzymes that have different abilities to metabolize the tamoxifen. So it could be that it's the microbial enzymatic activity, not just our host genetics, that drive the variability in tamoxifen response. And so that's exactly what Elizabeth Bess found in her study. She was even able to recreate it in mouse models. And so this has promise for helping to have a more widespread efficacy of one of the most common breast cancer treatments. That's a really huge accomplishment, and we should all be proud of Elizabeth Bess. Okay, my last story has to do with pregnancy. And this is a really interesting one that these results they've come out for about 10 years, and so I think it's a fun one to share. That this has been a consistent finding, and it turns out that during pregnancy, the changes in our immunity and metabolism in pregnancy are also reflected in our gut microbiome. And so in the third trimester of pregnancy, you see consistent shifts in the gut microbiome across lots of different women in this study. And in some ways, the third trimester gut microbiome looks a little bit like a type 2 diabetes signal in the gut microbiome. But this is totally normal, and people have their gut microbiome return back to itself after pregnancy. And the infant microbiome is also not affected by the maternal health status in the studies that have been done so far. And the infants end up becoming more similar to their own mothers through time. So it's interesting to understand how our microbiomes shift to support our metabolism in a time where our bodies change so much during pregnancy. Okay, my final thing I want to share is what I thought was a really nice gut myth being corrected in the New York Times recently. And the myth is that everyone should take probiotics to promote their health. And I love this final quote here in the article, that an optimal gut doesn't start with lots of pills and potions if you can help it. It just starts with balanced nutrition and variety. So that is really what you're going to learn about here with Chef Jess, who's going to show us the recipes that she's prepared for today. And so consuming foods that are high in fiber and fermented foods are the best we know for how to promote a healthy gut microbiome these days. Okay, so with that, I will leave you with my 5 key takeaways that will also be available on the website, just talking about the different parts of our lives and how our microbiomes change. And I will pass it over to Chef Jess. The recipes were emailed out and they are available on the website, and I'll kind of just page through them a little bit so that you have a chance to see what's coming. And I will happily answer questions on the chat as Chef Jess is cooking. So, thank you very much.
All right. So you can see all the fun we have in the kitchen all the time, including fires. Electric stoves. Actually, I think I've done it in a demo too. Electric stovetops are hard. I always tell people because you can't see a flame. So you just don't know when things are actually hot. So I'm going to share my screen. Sorry. There we go. We are ready to go. So we are going to make 3 things or 4, or I'm going to talk to you about it. I always overdo these recipes, I feel like. And so we're going to start right away so that I can make it to the end. We're going to start with the black bean egg bites with the Verde yogurt. Why? This is a good, I meet a lot of parents who have kids who are very limited on what they eat. And one of the things that I find a lot of parents seem to have their kids eat are egg bites. Starbucks, you can buy egg bites frozen like at Costco and things like that. They are probably one of the easiest things to make if you have the right tools. And I know the one question I'm going to get asked right now is it safe to put silicone into the oven at 350? 350, in my opinion, is still okay. Why do we use silicone for something like the egg bakes? Because they need to come out. So it's either you're doing something in a vessel that you're going to completely eat it in, or you need something that it can pop out of. This is when you start questioning, I'm eating something healthy, right? You're eating something incredibly healthy, but I need a way to cook it. This right now will be the easiest way for you to cook and then freeze so that you can have something healthy later on. So the recipe does have you cook the red onions and the red bell pepper and onion ahead of time and then adding it in. Now, I know that sounds excessive, but going forward, have onion, garlic, and bell pepper, or onion, garlic, and zucchini, carrots, already mixed and chopped up. And that way you can add it into things like this whenever you need. And this was washed, but we left the sticker on. And just to let you know that the glue on here, if you didn't know, the not glue, well, actually, yeah, it is glue, is edible. And so if you ever get a little bit on it, you're okay. So I'm going to take off the ends of my bell pepper and go around and dice. Remember, dice on the inside of the bell pepper so that you don't slip. And you can use green, red, orange, really any color that you want. And again, if you don't want bell pepper, you can use what other vegetables. Spinach would be also good. And guess what? At the very end, if you don't even want to saute all of this, just use frozen veggies. Okay? I'm going to keep this on the side. You can use that too. Just for time's sake, I'm going to speed it up. Eggs have gone down in price. They're not cheap still, but they have gone down in price a little bit, I find. So
yeah, they're not as hard to find. They're not like 1 pack per person anymore.
No, they're not. Thank goodness. And so go ahead and buy your eggs. They are coming in different sizes. And so just keep your eye out. If you are a baker, the large eggs are a little bit smaller than they have been in the past. And so just if you are a baker, you got to make some adjustments these days.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to take my onion and I'm going to dice it too. Now think, you want this pretty fine because everything needs to fit into a little muffin tin. So this is going to challenge you on your knife skills. So you want to go as fine and as thin as you can to ensure that it gets evenly split amongst everything. That is it. Okay, so I'm gonna heat up my pan, and then I've got 2 cloves of garlic as well. If you've noticed me cook now, because I cook on electric in here, I tend to actually put everything together and saute it together. First of all, I like the flavor of garlic. So the garlic is the part where I'm not going to let hit the hot oil, because if it does, it'll kind of seize all that flavor into that bite until you eat that garlic. So if you want to spread that flavor, you got to put it on top of all the things that you want to eat it with. I'm going to go in and dice and slice. And if you want a garlic press, you can use a garlic press too. Oh, I was talking to patients the other day about bell peppers. And if we all know that there's the dirty dozen, like all the veggies and the fruits and vegetables that you should be getting. And bell peppers are one of the ones that are the worst. They have been sprayed with pesticides so much. So if you can't buy organic, what I've been telling people is look for the ugly ones. Look for the ones that aren't as pretty, because it just means that the bugs didn't go on them. So there's some stores now that'll like have reclaimed produce, or produce that they take back, or produce that's harder to sell because it's not as pretty. That stuff is good because it means it hasn't been sprayed too much. So I'm going to add a little bit of oil into a cast iron, and I'm just going to go ahead and saute this. Oh, quick note about cast iron, because I know a lot of people are starting to play around with cast iron. Carbon steel is also good, but cast iron is cool. But this is what I need people to understand about cast iron. Cast iron has one temperature and one temperature only. It's hot or it's not hot. What that means is if I try to heat this up at a very, very hot flame, I'm going to get hot spots. And that's when things stick. So if you want your cast iron to evenly cook and not stick, what you want to do is heat it up slowly. Now it's still going to get hot, but because you're heating it up slowly, that it's able to spread evenly and prevent things from sticking. So always start low if you can at home, and then slowly turn it. You can increase it, decrease it based on what you need, but just understanding that it'll hold that heat for you. But if you do it slowly, it'll be more even.
We have a question about what kind of oil. Is it extra virgin olive oil?
Yes. So we usually do a blend of canola and olive oil in here. So we do a blend, the olive oil canola blend. And then, of course, we've got good old black beans. So one of the best habits, if you want to call it a habit, if you want to start a new habit today, this is what you can do, is cooking a batch of beans a week. Doesn't matter what kind, black beans, pinto beans, but see if you can cook one batch a week and then use them throughout your meals, whether it be for a salad, a soup, just something, even as blend it all together and make a dip out of it. But see if you can somehow start incorporating more beans into your diet. And one of the best ways to start doing that is to just cook one batch of beans a week. And at the very end of the week, if you don't use it, make a soup out of it. It's so easy to do, and then you'll get into the habit of doing it more. So we're also going to add a little bit of cheese and then our eggs. So I'm going to go ahead and start beating some eggs up. So again, when you crack eggs, you want to crack on the side of a table or anything but the bowl. One hit is what you usually want, if you can. The older the egg, the sturdier the egg white. Okay, so if you are looking for sturdy egg whites, you need to make sure that the eggs are old. Same goes for hard-boiled eggs, everyone. A lot of people think that there's these million tricks for all these hard-boiled eggs, and there isn't. It's called an old egg. The older the egg, the easier it is to peel. That's all that it is. The baking soda does help, But at the end of the day, it's the age of the egg. All right, so I'm going to turn that off.
We got a question about freezing the cooked beans, or can you keep them in the fridge? I know I keep them in the fridge for like the week that I'm using them.
Yeah.
You could freeze them if it's going to be more than a week.
Of course. And you can even, we're going to be doing the miso later, you can even freeze soaked beans.
Oh,
So like we made falafels this morning, and I do a baked falafel, and the baked falafel uses soaked beans. Like falafels only taste good when you use the soaked beans. You can't use cooked beans. You can't, but it's never something people just have on hand, like a batch of soaked beans. Well, you can freeze them soaked and they turn out perfectly the same. So you can freeze them.
You soak chickpeas overnight. And that's what goes into a falafel, so it's not mushy.
Yep.
I didn't know.
Yeah.
That.
Canned beans do not make falafels. Yeah. So super easy. And again, wholesome choice being down the street. Definitely helps. So then we're going to add that and then a little bit of cheese. You can sprinkle the cheese in. I like doing a little bit and then sprinkling a little bit on top too. If you don't like black beans, you can use other beans. You could even go ahead and use a lentil if you wanted. So I'm just going to go ahead, or spinach. But the whole idea is I wanted to show you how easy it is to bake these. You could actually, if you're not against using a microwave, you could cook these in your microwave in a mug. There's a lot of different ways to get healthy food into your diet like this and not spend an arm and a leg at Starbucks, because I know these can cost a lot. I mean, they're not the sous vide egg bites. And if you want to talk sous vide egg bites, we could go there too. But these hit the spot. And of course, they'll make more at 12. And then I'm going to just sprinkle a little bit more cheese on top. And that's it. Okay. I'm going to pop this in the oven and bake. Okay. So I don't know how much time we have for. We have 15 minutes. And I know people probably want to learn more about the miso than the stir-fried stuff. So I am going to show you how to make miso. And you have the recipe for natto. This is me at my finest, trying to show you too many things. Because as I was shopping for miso, I was like, oh, it'd be so cool if I showed you natto too.
Yeah.
The thing with natto is, and I'm going to explain it right now, natto is probably one of the easier ones because it's exactly like making yogurt. What's so interesting about all these cultures is we ferment foods, but we all ferment them very similarly in the sense that you use a fermented object to ferment another, to continue fermenting. So the easiest way to make natto is to actually just take other natto and put it into soybeans, and that's it. So you have the instructions there, and you can buy natto in any Japanese or Asian supermarket. The problem is you can never find it because it's in the frozen section. So you find it in the frozen section and you can use it, and then you can use it to make more natto. Now, the way that you would make it is you would add it into something like this. So this is soybeans that I soaked overnight and then I pressure cooked. I pressure cooked it to the point where if I were to actually press on each bean, it is nice and soft, okay? Traditionally, you would use a masher or you could use something to mash this up. I'm going to use a food processor. And I'm going to purposely keep some of them whole. Now, this is a personal preference now. How many of these you want to keep whole? How many of them you want to keep pureed like that? So it's really up to you. I like a few whole pieces. You can choose. Oops. Too many plugs. There we go. All right.
And we got a question about cooking in the Instant Pot. And yes, for how long?
I did the Instant Pot for about 40 minutes. Okay. So I'm going to keep doing it a little bit more. Now, I read a really interesting article thing the other day, and I thought I would share it with you. And it was somebody in a restaurant. I'm going to add a little bit of the water that I cooked the soybeans with too, just so that it gets nice and smooth. And this gentleman was working in a Japanese restaurant, and he found a case of miso that had expired 2 years ago. Now, this block of miso was as dark as you could imagine it being in color. But the question was it still usable and was it still edible? This is what's cool about miso. Fermented products at the end of the day really last quite a long time, miso being one of them because of the amount of salt. And the other thing is the if it's not exposed to light. So those two things will keep it good for quite a long time. So yes, at 2 years, it was still okay to use.
Wow.
Yep. All right. So now I've got my mixed beans, right? So part of it is pureed, some of it isn't, just so that I get that pretty kind of look to it. Again, totally up to you if you want it this way. Now, you can use a little bit of old miso that you have as long as it's unpasteurized, or we're not going to do that. We're just going to start inoculating it, or we're going to ferment it. This is koji rice. Koji rice looks like. It's a very, very interesting look. So pretty much these grains all have a mold on top of it. Love how we eat mold like this, right? But this is what's going to make your miso ferment then. They use this for a whole bunch of different things, including making sake. When you buy it live like this in the container, you can buy it at any of those Japanese supermarkets. It's live. So you want to use it within a few days of buying it. Don't let it get warm or anything like that, because it is alive. Instructions are inside too, and it explains how you can actually use this as a marinade. It breaks down food so that it starts making it easier for us to digest. So the whole idea is we're going to take this and mix it with salt. So I've got salt, a lot of salt, sea salt. You don't want to use anything with iodine in it. I'm going to mix that up, and then I'm going to mix it inside my miso.
I mean, in theory, we need iodine too. So why not use iodine?
So the iodine will not allow this to ferment then. Gotcha. It'll kill it all. Gotcha. It's a really interesting thing about iodine. Yeah, a lot of people are low on iodine, I guess. Mm-hmm. But what I find interesting is the people that are low on iodine are usually people who are not eating out. Because in restaurants, they're still using a lot of table salt. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of people that have gone kosher, but when we start using sea salt, kosher salts that don't have iodine in them, mm-hmm. and you're cooking at home, what ends up happening is you don't have enough iodine in your diet then.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I remember when I was pregnant, I realized the iodine we had at home the salt we had at home was kosher without iodine. And I had a little scare where I was like, did I get enough iodine? Yeah. I think, as you said, from eating out. Okay.
Oh, right.
We also got a question from someone who has a friend who gave her some natto.
Oh, yes.
She forgot about it in the fridge for a year, and can she still eat it?
Is it in the fridge or the freezer?
Fridge.
Oh, no, probably not. Yeah, I wouldn't know about that, because the problem with natto is it starts turning sour. So certain things will actually start going bad. Mm-hmm. And I feel like natto does that. And that's why when you make it traditionally, they stick it right into the freezer after about 2 days. Okay. And so, yeah, no, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, so now the fun thing about miso is if you want really, really good miso, 6 months, everyone. Get your calendar out. Yep, 6 months.
Okay.
So if you've ever noticed in the Japanese supermarkets, there's a variety of colors, the whites all the way up to the reds. And that is just how long it's been fermenting for. So the lighter the color, the less flavor or less fermentation it has. So you could make a white miso technically in like 6 weeks. But traditionally, like a really good miso, 6 months.
Okay. So in November.
We'll check on this. Yep. And so we'll be back in November, but let's get it ready. So what you want to do is you can take a little bit of the salt and just put it on the bottom, just like that. This is the fun part, and I'm not going to be able to do all of it, but I'll take a picture and put it online later. But what you're going to do is you're going to make balls. This is really fun. And so if you have kids, you make balls and you layer them throughout the container, okay? All the way up to the top. Now, if you notice, I didn't add enough liquid to make this. I just added enough liquid so that I could make little balls out of this. That's all I'm doing. So I'm going to go in and keep going and play with it all the way until I get to the top. Then I'm going to just take a piece of parchment paper and layer it on top and then put a weight on it. Now, the weight is always the question because people, you just don't have a weight like that. So what do? I like to use just a bag of water and lay it right on top. And that weight of that water will keep everything down and make sure everything is okay. And then you're just going to keep it in a dark spot, start tasting it in about a month or two, and then about 6 months, it'll get darker and darker.
And you leave it at room temp? At
room temperature in the dark. This is my thing with miso, though. If you like miso and this is all you're going to make more. Like, just double it up. It's pretty hard to mess up if you're following exact measurements, including like the temperature, the measurements of the salt and the koji and the soybeans. Mm-hmm. You can't mess it up. But I would hate for you to make it and realize it's really good, and then you have to wait another 6 months to have it again. So it's a completely different world than the regular miso you buy in the store. So hopefully some of you will try it. I will post this I'll post it on our website. I'll take some pictures when I finish it, and then we'll keep checking on it. Maybe I'll do some posts every month or two and see how our miso is looking these days.
That sounds great. We got a question about the Chinese fermented tofu called furu.
Yes.
Is that also probiotic?
You know what? That is a great question. I don't know.
It must be.
It must be because, because it tastes like it. And then when you take it out, it's very goopy. And yeah, it has to be. But I don't know what mold that they're adding in there. But then, yeah, it must have it. It must. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the world of molds is very, very, very interesting. All right. Let me check on the egg bites are still going. So while we're doing that, quick talk on, so that's for the miso. So try it. Again, you can buy everything at any Japanese supermarket. Koji, you can probably buy online, but koji comes in two forms. It comes wet and dry. I like the dry one more because the wet one looks really scary. Sometimes it looks like mold. It does. And so use the dry one if you can find it. But again, if you use the wet one, you would just use less of that soybean liquid that we added in. All right. So now let's talk really quickly about fried rice because everybody likes a good fried rice, right? Unfortunately, fried rice is chock full of oil. So one way that we can counter that oil is with what? Fiber and good rice. Now, you can use brown rice. There's nothing wrong with making brown rice, fried rice, but barley is really cool to eat too. Barley is a grain that unfortunately is not as accessible as I thought. I went to Smart and Final this morning and I asked them, "Oh, do you have any barley?" And she looks at me and she's like, "Order it on Amazon."
They have it at Wholesome Choice.
They have it at Wholesome Choice, and the Albertsons on campus has it too.
Yeah,
so,
but I see what you're saying.
It is harder to come by these days. But you know where the other place has it a lot? Korean supermarkets, because Koreans use a lot of barley. They make barley tea, and they do a lot with barley. And so they actually will make rice and add barley in it to bulk it up. So it's a very good grain to add into your rice if you like it. It's chewy. It's got a little bit more of a bite to it.
We got a question about heating miso and how that affects the nutrients of probiotics.
Yes, I love that question because if you are Japanese, you would say you can never heat miso up. So traditionally, when you make miso soup, I would heat up the water and I would have miso here. I add the hot water to the miso, turn off my flame, and then pour the miso back in. The whole idea is that the heat can kill some of that good bacteria. And we do know that, like with pasteurization, there is a temperature where that good the benefits are lost. I would say with miso, though, it is so fermented that you would still get some of those good benefits, even if it is hot. So
from the fermented food microbiome studies, if you just take the molecules, that is enough to have
it is, right?
reduction in inflammation and stuff. So it's not that the microbes colonize anyway.
Yeah. Oh, that makes sense. Yeah. So, but yeah, no, definitely. There's traditions, I think, that we do with food. And I feel like with a lot of fermented foods, we're afraid to heat them up just because of what we think we know about how things work. And so it's just like with the Vitamix, we were telling people they shouldn't be drinking smoothies because they were going to break down their fiber. Well, it seems like most of that fiber is preserved even in a smoothie. So we learn things every day, I feel like, that we're corrected on. All right, so we got some scallions. I've got some asparagus, some eggs. I'm just going to go ahead and chop away. Feel free to ask questions too. For scallions, I like using all of it. But again, if you don't have to. The light green is a lot lighter in flavor. If you have a sensitive GI, or you just like trying low FODMAP maybe, but you're missing your onion, you can use green onions and you can use just the green tops, not the white parts, but you can make an oil out of it and then use that oil for flavor. So some people do get sensitive with the onion family, garlic family, and so you do want to be careful when serving certain people these things. All right, and asparagus. This asparagus is so good. Okay, and I need to teach you how to choose asparagus. Stop trying to find thin asparagus, but don't go for thick asparagus. You really want to go for the middle ones. If it's too thin, it ends up being too stringy and not good. And then if it's too thick, it's kind of chalky. So I'm going to cut these into 1-inch sections. And again, use frozen if you want. And then we've got some ginger, some garlic, and onion and eggs. So I'm going to heat up my pan right now. For the ginger, you can go ahead and peel with a spoon. If you have a Daiso nearby and you've never gone to a Daiso before, I don't know. Some people might not have. It's a Japanese kind of like store, cheap stuff, even though most of it is made in China. They have so many cool tools for ginger, garlic, and things like that. Sometimes cool just to see what the new trend is. Oh, excuse me, that was me. And then I like using a microplane, but if you like the flavor of garlic, you can even just chop it up, slice it up. So, onion. And I'm going to make this in a cast iron. So you could probably do it in a stainless if you've got your stainless well heated and enough oil. I'm really trying to get people to stop using that nonstick pan if they can. And I'm upset that Costco is selling Hexclad because Hexclad is still got nonstick in there, you guys. Stop. The Hexclad does stick. That was close. Probably shouldn't have said something bad about Gordon Ramsay's brand.
So if we want to make eggs or something that's so tempting to use a nonstick pan
It is.
for something like eggs, like what do you think? You can get that working? You get the oil in there at the right temperature?
Yep. And I feel like this is the other tool. I just got some yucky egg all over here. Sorry. This is the other tool, everyone. Your magnificent fish spatula. You look up anything that says fish spatula. It's like this. It's got a handle. These are like $5. What it is this lip right here can go under it. Mm-hmm. It's a little bit thinner, so everything kind of comes up when you put it in there then. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to add that oil in there. Add my onion, ginger, and garlic. And then I have some air fried tofu. If you wanted to add chicken, you can use chicken. You can use any protein. One of the easiest proteins I've been telling people to add into their stir fries or anything like this, where it's just veggies or whatever, a can of beans, garbanzo beans. Like beans are your best friend when you just need to bulk things up. The veggies are easy, but the protein can be rough sometimes. And cost wise, beans are so cheap. But I am very, very happy that there seems to be some good success that they're having with lab grown meat. So
Cool.
yeah, not the fake impossible meat stuff, but actual meat that they're growing in the lab. And they're trying to figure out how to make sure that it's accessible to all people too, because making it affordable will be the next step.
Yeah.
But I think it's cool that we're trying to go away from it, but at the same time realizing humans will never say no to meat.
Well, my latest trick is that I make lentils in the rice cooker
Oh,
on the weekend, just the green ones. And I just like treat it as if it were rice, and they come out, and then you just stick them in a Tupperware. And then I scoop, when we're making scrambled eggs in the morning, I just like add
it in there.
That. Or like when you have rice or anything else, you just like, they're ready to go.
Add it in. It is. It's nice and easy. All right. So then I add the air fried tofu. Somebody asked me the other day on how to work with tempeh. And I was like, tempeh is probably one of the harder soy products to work with if you want it to taste good. You need to steam it first. And so it's an extra step usually with tempeh. All right. So now I'm going to dig a hole in the middle. If you need to go, I'm sorry. But I'm going to dig a hole in the middle, and then I'm going to cook my egg right in the middle with a little bit of oil. So I like using the greens of the scallion right here, like that. And then I'll take my egg, put it right in the middle. And then give it a good stir. And there's my scrambled egg. So I'm going to let that sit though and let it come together. And then your egg bites look like this. And then the sauce was just avocado mixed together. So thank you, everyone.
Beautiful. Looks so nice.
I'll get pictures of what everything looks like at the end. Thank you for joining us, and hopefully we'll see you soon next year.
Great.